Welcome to a journey through one of France's most iconic treasures, the Château de Versailles. This legendary palace, a symbol of royal grandeur and refinement, is filled with architectural and artistic wonders. Today, we invite you to step inside the royal apartments, marvel at the dazzling Hall of Mirrors, explore the historic halls, and wander through the stunning French gardens. From the Royal Opera to the enchanting Queen's Hamlet, and through the ornate groves and fountains, every corner of Versailles tells a fascinating story. Get ready for a captivating immersion into the art, splendor, and history of France. The historic galleries, to all the glories of France. In the 19th century, Versailles took on a new purpose and became a museum dedicated to all the glories of France, following the wishes of King Louis Philippe, who took the throne in 1830. The museum primarily consisted of a collection of paintings and sculptures, which continued to grow until the early 20th century. A museum for national reconciliation, inaugurated in June 1837, this museum, dedicated to all the glories of France, was intended to symbolically unite the supporters of the various regimes that had ruled since 1789. By glorifying a shared national history, Louis Philippe sought to legitimize his rule and unify the French people. The Gallery of Battles, the largest hall in the Palace of Versailles. Among the historic galleries created in the Palace of Versailles by King Louis Philippe, the Gallery of Battles stands as the most monumental. Spanning nearly 120 meters in length and 13 meters in width, it occupies almost the entire upper floor of the south wing of the palace. Officially inaugurated on June 10, 1837, it became one of the highlights of the Museum of French History. The Hall of the Coronation. Formerly the second chapel of the palace, 1672 to 1682, then the Great Guard Room, shared by the King and Queen, 1682 to 1789, this vast space, located at the entrance to the royal apartments, was transformed in 1833 into a hall dedicated to the glory of Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul and later Emperor of the French. The Empire Rooms. A contemporary of Napoleon I, King Louis Philippe sought to rally former supporters of the Empire and the Bonapartist movement to his regime. At Versailles, he dedicated several spaces to Napoleon's legacy, gathering a significant collection of paintings commissioned by the emperor for his propaganda. These artworks, which once decorated his imperial residences, were brought together on the ground floor of the south wing, beneath the Gallery of Battles. The Room of 1792. The only surviving hall from Louis Philippe's museum dedicated to the French Revolution, the Room of 1792 serves as a key to understanding the king's historical and political vision. The Gallery of the History of the Palace. A completely redesigned journey. Redesigned in 2023, the Gallery of the History of the Palace provides visitors with a deeper understanding of the evolution of the Château de Versailles, showcasing its transformations and architectural developments over more than 4 centuries of history. 4 centuries of history. With its 3 palaces, gardens, and vast park, the Domaine de Versailles is a site of great historical and topographical complexity. From the laying of the first stone under Louis XIII to the revival of the chateau in the 19th century, Versailles has continuously evolved, shining on the world stage for over 400 years. The King's Grand Apartment. This prestigious suite of 7 rooms was designed as a state apartment, where the sovereign's official ceremonies took place. To reflect this function, it was decorated in an extravagant Italian style, highly favored by Louis XIV, featuring marble paneling, painted ceilings, and refined ornaments. The Hall of Mirrors, the War Room, and the Peace Room, the Hall of Mirrors. The most iconic space in the Château de Versailles, the Hall of Mirrors, also known as the Grand Gallery, replaced a vast open terrace overlooking the gardens, originally designed by architect Louis Lavaux. As this terrace was impractical and exposed to the elements, it was soon condemned. Jules Ardouin Mansart, Lavaux's successor, devised a more suitable solution and transformed the space into a magnificent enclosed gallery. Construction began in 1678 and was completed in 1684. The Royal Chapel. The Royal Chapel was completed in 1710, at the end of Louis XIV's reign. It was the 5th and final chapel built within the Palace of Versailles since Louis XIII. The design was proposed to the king in 1699 by Jules Ardouin Mansart, but he passed away in 1708 before its completion. The construction was then finalized by his brother-in-law Robert de Cotte. The Royal Opera. The Royal Opera is one of the most significant works by architect Ange-Jacques Gabriel. When inaugurated in 1770 under Louis XV, it was the largest theater in Europe, a masterpiece of technical innovation and artistic refinement. Initially a theater for the monarchy, it later became a venue for the Republic, hosting festivities, performances, and parliamentary debates throughout its history. Marie Antoinette's private chambers. Behind her grand apartment, the queen had small private rooms for her personal use and for her ladies-in-waiting. Marie Leszczyńska used them for reading, painting, meditating, or receiving intimate visitors. These rooms, exquisitely decorated, were frequently remodeled throughout the 18th century to adapt to the changing tastes and needs of the queens. The king's private apartment, a private space for collections. Following his state apartment, Louis XIV had a series of private rooms built, overlooking the marble courtyard and the royal courtyard, where he displayed his collections of artworks and paintings. Louis XV extensively transformed this space, creating salons, studies, dining rooms, libraries, scientific galleries, and laboratories. He also expanded the upper floors to enlarge his private domain, offering himself greater privacy. Later, Louis XVI adapted these rooms to his personal needs, incorporating his library and wardrobe cabinet. The king's apartment. Around the marble courtyard. Louis XIV redesigned his apartment multiple times. The most significant transformation took place in 1701, when he moved his bedroom to its current location at the center of the marble courtyard facade. Like all royal residences, the king's apartment follows a strictly organized sequence of rooms, each serving a specific purpose. A guard room, 2 antechambers, the king's bedroom, a private cabinet. Beyond these rooms, which were strictly regulated by court etiquette, lay the king's private domain, where no one could enter without an invitation. The Queen's Grand Apartment. Overlooking the Parterre du Midi, the Queen's Grand Apartment is designed in symmetry with the King's Grand Apartment. However, unlike the King, who abandoned his Grand Apartment early in his reign, the Queen continued to reside in hers. This explains why its decor was repeatedly modified throughout the 18th century. The Grand Commune is a little-known building that still preserves remnants from the 17th century. Its history is closely tied to that of the Palace of Versailles, from its construction under Louis XIV to the present day, where it houses part of the staff of the public establishment of the Palace Museum and National Estate of Versailles. The Louis XIV rooms. On the first floor of the northern wing of the Palace of Versailles, the Louis XIV rooms have undergone a complete redesign in their overall layout. Formerly occupied by the apartments of the Princes of the Blood, these historic 17th century rooms were transformed by Louis Philippe in 1833 to become the Museum of the History of France, inaugurated on June 10, 1837. However, their current presentation dates back to the post-World War II period. Although the display has been rearranged several times, the original spirit endures, reflected in the density of exhibited works. Paintings, sculptures, furniture, and decorative objects are set against velvet textiles in colors reminiscent of the Grand Siècle, evoking the atmosphere of the royal apartments while maintaining the function of a museum space. The Gardens, the art of perspective. From the central window of the Hall of Mirrors, visitors are presented with a vast perspective leading the eye from the water parterre to the horizon. This east-west axis, predating the reign of Louis XIV, was redesigned and extended by André Lenotre, who widened the Royal Alley and had the Grand Canal dug to enhance the grandeur of the landscape. The Queen's Hamlet. Marie Antoinette undertook the landscaping of the Trianon Gardens in two distinct phases. The first, begun in 1777, was the creation of the English Garden. Later, in 1783, she commissioned the architect Richard Meek to extend the garden northward by constructing a village around a new lake. The work began in the summer of 1783 and was completed in 1786. The architectural style of the Queen's Hamlet is not easily defined. It is a blend of various rural influences that, despite their diversity, form a remarkably harmonious ensemble. The cottages are arranged along the eastern shore of the large lake, creating a scenic arc designed to be admired from the opposite side of the water. The Grand Trianon. The architecture of Jules Hardouin Mansart. The Grand Trianon was built in 1687 by Jules Hardouin Mansart on the site of the Trianon de Porcelaine, which had been erected in 1670 at the request of Louis XIV. The king sought refuge there from the ostentation of the court and used it as a retreat for his love affair with Madame de Montespan. Considered the most refined architectural ensemble within the Versailles estate, the Grand Trianon stands out for its elegance. The Petit Trianon, Origin and Design. In 1758, Louis XV envisioned the construction of a new pavilion at the heart of the gardens he had been developing and enhancing for the past 10 years. He entrusted the project to his chief architect, Ange-Jacques Gabriel, who designed a chateau large enough to accommodate both the king and part of his entourage. With this masterpiece, Gabriel created a true manifesto of neoclassical architecture, perfectly embodying the Greek style that was then sweeping across Europe. The Carriage Gallery housed within the Grande Écurie. The Carriage Gallery offers a unique opportunity to admire one of the largest royal projects ever undertaken to shelter horses. Majestic carriages, the small vehicles of Marie Antoinette's children, sedan chairs and sleds, evoking a strange and marvelous bestiary, are on display. This exceptional collection provides a glimpse into the splendor of the court under the Ancien Régime, the Empire, and the Restoration. If you're passionate about history, architecture, and French art, subscribe now to uncover even more secrets and wonders of the Château de Versailles. Like this video, share it with your friends, and let us know in the comments which part of the palace fascinates you the most. Let's bring the timeless beauty of Versailles to life together.